The Nothing Phone 3 was, without a doubt, one of the most divisive, most polarizing, and I'd argue one of the most overhated smartphones of 2025. And don't get me wrong, there was good reason for it because there was so much controversy at the time. We had that big story where people discovered that Nothing was accidentally using stock images for the Nothing Phone 3 camera samples. A lot of people hated the removal of the glyph lighting in exchange for the dot matrix display. People absolutely did not like the $799 flagship price for a phone that was using a sub-flagship chip in the Snapdragon 8S Gen 4, and many people felt the revised design with the asymmetric camera layout ruined the clean aesthetic that Nothing was previously known for. But I do have to say, as someone that actually continued to use this phone despite all the hate, it's honestly been one of my favorite smartphone experiences of 2025, no questions asked. If you've been keeping track of smartphone trends in 2025, you can probably fully relate to this. Smartphones have 100% reached peak boredom. If you look at the market right now, it feels like every manufacturer is just remixing the same design elements over and over again. Lately, we did get something relatively new and interesting with the ultra-thin Galaxy S25 Edge and the iPhone Air, which really haven't taken off if you want to believe the recent reporting as of late. Meanwhile, every other smartphone lineup has settled into this comfortable, boring rhythm of identical glass slabs with boxy shapes and rounded corners, while at the same time reusing 99% of the same look that we've seen over and over again for the past few years. And that's exactly why the Nothing Phone 3 feels like such a refreshing device to use in the day-to-day. Based on what we've seen for all the phones released in 2025, I can easily tell you the Nothing Phone 3 still feels like it has genuine character. I mean, look at this thing for yourself and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. The longer you look, the more details should stick out to you, like all the lines, bumps, dots and screws, ribbon cables coming in and out of view, mixed in with some clean branding, shapes of different sizes, LEDs sprinkled in here and there, and overall, it's the kind of phone that still feels like it has some kind of mechanical soul that actually makes me want to interact with it. And when I do interact with this phone, especially when showing it off to other people, I get this wow factor that I haven't gotten from an Android device in quite some time. When I show people this dot matrix display, it turns into a fun conversation starter, which, as someone who is somewhat extroverted, I would say it's a great icebreaker. Every time I show someone the spin the bottle game, for example, I can always get some kind of joke out of it and make everyone laugh, and it shows people that tech is still fun in the year 2026. Even people that have absolutely zero interest in tech and they just buy whatever smartphone is the easiest and cheapest for them still ask about this little display on the back. Again, because it does have so much character. But outside of these social settings, there were a few uses that I've come to really appreciate, like an animated battery percentage that reacts according to the current remaining capacity, a Pomodoro timer for productivity sessions, a sunrise/sunset widget to track the sun's position, plus a few more. And also, I find myself really enjoying the dot matrix display for just general entertainment. I have a music equalizer, which is a must-have addition in my book for a more dynamic effect while playing music. I have a little water physics stimulator and random animations, which are just nice if I need a little bit of low-stakes stimulation. It's a way better outlet for that as opposed to opening my phone and just doom scrolling for hours at a time, let's say. Long story short, the dot matrix display is what you make of it, and for me, I am really happy to have it as a unique, fun part of my phone's identity, which is why I've been enjoying it over other devices released in the past year. But alongside all that, I would say the software is where this phone has really made a good impression on me. For one, Nothing OS to this day still continues to be the closest thing you can get to a Pixel-like experience outside of Google's own hardware. It shares the same clean, stock Android DNA, but then layers on just the right amount of extra customization that I do sometimes wish Google would adopt as well. You have built-in support for icon packs, enlarged folders with different layout options, double tap to lock is here, a highly coveted feature that I see requested all the time on Pixel, the ability to remap the power button to any app or app shortcut, or even an option for a smart app launcher that automatically groups your apps instead of showing you a standard alphabetical list, plus so much more. It also feels surprisingly modern, adopting some elements from Material 3 Expressive, like that satisfying sticky animation you get when you're closing notifications out, which makes the whole system feel great to interact with, all while still holding on to their minimalist design aesthetic. Clearly, Nothing is still trying to do their own thing without ruining that clean Android experience that hardcore users love, and personally, I love what they're doing so far. Pretty much once a month since launch, we did get some kind of update focusing on stability and bug fixes, which I have noticed throughout the months, but in December, we got a major update that gave us Nothing OS 4.0 on top of Android 16. With that update, we did get some Nothing-specific features like pop-up view, now supporting 2 apps at once, which is just a nice quality of life change. There's new lock screen clock faces. There's 2x2 quick setting tile support, so you have a little bit more room to stretch out those quick setting tiles. There's an extra dark mode, plus an AI dashboard to monitor which AI models are accessing your data. Great for transparency. On top of that, we also got all of these standard Android 16 features like live updates or the modes feature that replaces Do Not Disturb. But for me, the true, real reason that I've been enjoying Nothing OS 4.0 is because of the newly implemented Nothing Playground. For those who don't know, Nothing Playground was released alongside Nothing OS 4.0 in December, and it serves as an app store of sorts that congregates all of the community-made additions to your Nothing phone in one singular location. If you want to see what's actually available in the storefront, you can go to playground.nothing.tech right now so you can see what's on offer. But if you do have a Nothing phone, you can visit that same website and start downloading community-made items right now, like glyph toys, camera presets, EQ profiles, and something called Essential Apps, otherwise known as AI-generated widget. Now, I know, guys, we don't like AI-generated anything, but these are super simple little home screen toys like various clocks, mini games, data pieces like random space facts or Pokemon stats, and other miscellaneous interactables that do help make your home screen feel unique. It's not like you're talking to an AI model or anything like that. You just download the widgets and they appear on your home screen, and they have probably about 100 or so to choose from with a growing list every day. And what I love about this is that it's completely community driven. You can see the new trending widgets or popular ones that the community is gravitating towards. Long story short, it is a really good idea that keeps the device constantly feeling fresh because there is always something new to play around with. And honestly, this level of community engagement is something that the smartphone market desperately needs these days. And it is a long lost feature from phones we used to have back in the good old days. But before we move on to the rest of the phone, I will say there is one huge, absolutely major issue with this software, and that is Essential Space. Essential Space is marketed as a way to easily gather, organize, and store a lot of information like voice memos, screenshots, and a lot more. It's kind of like a second brain to keep track of everything that is easily accessible by a new button called the Essential Key. But really, at the end of my 6-month stint with this device, I've only found Essential Space to be incredibly annoying and still pretty half-baked even after a few years of development. To me, I find it best for reminders and to temporarily store screenshots that will shortly be disposable, just like a virtual post-it note, I would say. But other than that, I don't really find Essential Space to be particularly useful, and even worse, I don't really want to use this feature in the first place. It's actually the same exact issue that I have with Pixel Screenshots or Pixel Journal or Apple Journal or Mindspace on OnePlus phones. There's no web portal for me to actually view the content on. If I want to review whatever information that I have stored on these apps, I have to go to the one device I'm using it on with no way around it, which isn't really ideal. I do have more than one device that I use every single day. Sometimes I need the content on my MacBook Pro or on my OnePlus Pad 3, and if I don't have my Nothing Phone 3 immediately available at any given time, I'm pretty much screwed on accessing that data. Not to mention there's no search feature. Like, there's no way to manually do a basic search for a specific screenshot or a specific piece of data. So if you put 1,000 screenshots in there, let's say, good luck finding exactly what you're looking for, as there's no real search bar. You can't really type in a keyword anywhere. So unfortunately, it just needs a little bit more work. Same situation as last year, especially if Nothing wants their users relying on this day in and day out. And at least for me, Essential Space just does not fit into my professional workflow the way that I really hoped it would have. And those are my biggest points worth mentioning about the Nothing Phone 3, but of course in this long-term look, it does make sense to quickly go over the rest of the experience, which is the usual stuff you should know about, but really isn't the main point of this long-term review. First, I think we need to address probably the biggest point of concern, the processor. The Nothing Phone 3 is powered by the Snapdragon 8s Gen 4, and let's be honest, at launch, this chip was absolutely brutalized. Users hated that the Nothing Phone 3 released with anything but the top-of-the-line Snapdragon 8 Elite, and I did see widespread reports of overheating and throttling, which I did personally experience, by the way, enough to the point where it would get noticeably hot doing something as simple as watching a YouTube video. But after many updates, I am happy to report that that issue has been completely resolved. The thermal management these days is significantly better, and for my daily tasks, the performance is more than enough. Interestingly, when you look at the raw numbers, this chip is actually punching a little bit above its weight class. In benchmarks, the Snapdragon 8s Gen 4 scores significantly higher than the Tensor G5 found in the new Pixel 10, which is the phone that I was using prior to this one. If I had to put a number on it, I would say the 8s Gen 4 offers maybe 60 to 70% of the raw power on the flagship Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5, which is still a decent value. I'd say it can handle a lot of modern Android games as well, like Delta Force, Destiny Rising, and Where Winds Meet, all of which ran fine, by the way, although I would say Where Winds Meet did stutter a little bit and drop frames, just something to keep in mind if gaming is super important to you. That said, the Snapdragon 8s Gen 4 is a solid chip that is also efficient enough to have good battery life. Of course, everyone uses their phone differently, so mileage may vary, but especially after the Android 16 update, I'm easily getting through a full day of heavy use with about 20% or more left in the tank. My usage is very typical, at least in my opinion. I'm checking on Slack and socials several times a day, watching an hour or so of YouTube, streaming music at the gym, Gemini prompts all throughout the day, plus testing games and some camera usage. It's not a two-day phone by any means, but it is dependable as an all-day device. But to me, what makes this phone perfect for my particular usage is the charging speed. Coming from a base model Pixel 10, being able to plug in and get 65-ish% charge in about 30 minutes is a true, genuine quality of life feature that I have a really hard time living without. However, while the performance and battery are great, my biggest concern, and the one that actually bothers me the most at this price point, is the display. On paper, everything looks perfectly fine. It's a 6.67-inch, 120Hz LTPO AMOLED display with a peak brightness of 4500 nits. It's definitely bright enough, especially during the day, but when you use it side by side with similarly priced phones like the Pixel 10, the iPhone, or even the Galaxy S25, something is definitely missing here. I'm not 100% sure what it is, but it lacks that pop and vibrancy that I'm used to, and I can't quite put my finger on it, but it feels like this is the one area where nothing cut corners somehow. It just doesn't feel like a flagship panel in my book. And also, one last issue, and it's a really big one for me personally. Nothing really needs to consider the placement of the essential key. For one, it's right below the power button, which means I'm constantly pressing it on accident. Even after 6 months, I'm still accidentally hitting it, and in Essential Space, I have dozens of screenshots of lock screens, black screens, random parts of my home screen. It's just a total waste of digital space, so please reconsider repositioning this key. Instead of being below the power button, I think it would serve so much better being right above the volume rocker instead. That way, no one's accidentally pressing it. Also, another pain point here is that you still cannot remap this key for something more useful. That means you will have to use a third-party workaround, which honestly isn't a very user-friendly experience. Finally, this was a long one, so let's close out this review talking about the camera situation, and honestly, this is where I think the character of the Nothing Phone 3 really shines the most. Hardware-wise, we do have your typical triple camera setup here, that being a 50 megapixel main, a 50 megapixel ultra-wide, but something genuinely unique here, we have a 50 megapixel periscope telephoto with 3x optical zoom. And yes, that periscope lens does indeed capture more detail when it comes to distant objects like texture on a faraway building, or keeping a subject much sharper than you would get from a typical non-periscope lens. Long-distance photography photography is just naturally great on this phone, no questions asked. But honestly, the biggest takeaway I've gotten from my 6 months with this camera is about the look of the photos as opposed to the camera performance. I don't know how, but photos from the Nothing Phone 3 seem to have a certain kind of mood to them. Like the camera is somehow taking more cinematic photos instead of going for a more realistic look. It's hard to say exactly what they're doing differently, but just looking at photos all day, every day, I would say the Nothing Phone 3 does a good job embracing the shadows, keeping them as black as possible for a more contrasty look, which I think does help bring out the texture in certain objects too. I'd also say colors on this camera lean more on the cooler side, which helps them feel a bit more crisp and modern looking. And I'm sure there's more to it, but I think just those two simple aspects combined is the best way I can describe why photos from this phone feel like I'm shooting from an old school camera that's giving this street grit type look to all of my images. Obviously, that doesn't mean this camera is perfect or the best by any means. I think it has a tough time dealing with motion, unlike Pixel phones, and in nighttime shots, shadows are absolutely crushed, so you won't be able to brighten up those areas very well in post. So while it is an excellent camera in its own right, and I think you'll be perfectly happy with the results, it certainly does not have that 10 out of 10 reliability I know I can get from a Pixel phone. So honestly, I am happy to say that the Nothing Phone 3 has completely turned it around for me. I am happy with it, and again, to me, it's definitely one of the most underrated phones of 2025. They did a great job with this device with almost everything except for the price. $800 is still a bit too much, so to me, this is definitely a get on sale type of device, mainly because that processor is technically a step below what many have expected. However, while I love this phone, I do have to admit the direction of the company is a big reason for concern. We saw that whole lock screen ad debacle with the Nothing Phone 3A Lite that just put a bad taste in everyone's mouth, and the whole bloatware situation forcing pre-installed apps on non-flagship phones was only changed after massive community backlash, and that didn't really help either. I'm purely speculating here, just to be clear, but it gives off the vibes that the company is struggling a bit, or at the very least is getting desperate, which makes me and probably many of you very wary of investing in their ecosystem in the first place. Unfortunately, it seems like there's just some kind of cloud of uncertainty looming over them, and we'll just have to wait and see how things play out in 2026. But on a macro level, looking at the device itself and the state of the software today, it's honestly a fantastic device. I am very happy with it, and I'm excited to see what Nothing comes up with in the future. As for my next device, I'll probably be moving back to the Pixel 10 or maybe forward to the OnePlus 15R, just because I do want to do long-term reviews of these devices. But that said, the Nothing Phone 3 is a phone that I could see myself using for the next few years if I wasn't constantly checking out new devices to review, which is always a huge compliment. Until next time, this has been Jordan Floyd with 9 to 5 Google. Thank you so much for watching this outrageously long review, and I will see you in the next one.